Greetings, everyone. We're back for another look at the precious writings of Shoghi Effendi, so foundational to our understanding of the revelation of Baha'u'llah. Who's the eyepiece, so to speak, to inspect all kinds of hidden wonders in the revelation. We all remain under his shade which shadoweth all mankind, and can draw inspiration from his writings, which are destined to inspire the House of Justice and all of us for the full range of the Baha'i dispensation. Friends, last week we climaxed with quoting different passages that Shoghi Effendi was citing to us to help us understand. And amongst those was the one from the Will and Testament of the Master, where he said that he defines the role of the Bab and then Baha'u'llah. And then he says, all others are servants unto him and do his bidding. Now, I mentioned previously that some of these questions had arisen during visits of pilgrims to Shoghi Effendi back in the early 30s. And it would be interesting to revisit them a bit. I wanted to share a little bit of the dialogue that I have here with the pilgrims, who in that case were Keith Ransom Kaler, and then there was Laurel Schoflacher, who was the wife of the hand of the cause, Schoflacher. And then Clara Dunn was present also, and Lyle Loveday. These notes were dictated by Keith to Laurel, who typed them out. And then they were approved by the other two. And they constitute nothing but pilgrim notes. That's true. But yet they're in some ways indicative of the circumstances of the belief of the American Baha'is about the station of Abdul Baha, which Shoghi Effendi is here clarifying for our edification and for the edification of future generations. Now, most of this derived from the fact that the Baha'is who had seen Abdul Baha, they thought they'd seen the Christ. He was an extraordinary figure. Their hearts were so deeply moved, they couldn't imagine anything greater than that. Our generation learns about that through accounts that we read, but it's not the same as the firsthand experience. So we had in those days what were referred to, even when I became a Baha'i in the 50s, as the Abdul Baha Baha'is. They came through Abdul Baha, they were educated by Abdul Baha, and then they learned about the teachings of Baha'u'llah and the Bab later on, or in different ways. To give you a little flavor of the conversation, which is that took place between them all, it starts off saying that Shoghi Effendi said the Baha'i revelation has two manifestations, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Abdul Baha, the perfect exemplar, the center of the covenant of mankind, the true interpreter of his words, a perfect human being. To give Abdul Baha a station comparable to Baha'u'llah is absolute heresy. The whole opposition of Muhammad Ali was based upon his insistence that Abdul Baha claimed to be the divine successor of Baha'u'llah, occupying a cognate station. Muhammad Ali declared, "Never so long as I live will I cease to agitate against this impostor who claims that before the expiration of a full 1,000 years to occupy the same station as Baha'u'llah." The misguided attitude of the friends in attempting to maintain Abdul Baha in this station was the basis of the whole persecution by the covenant breakers. Again and again, Abdu'l-Baha wrote disclaiming any station beyond that of exemplar, interpreter, center of the covenant. But Muhammad Ali, his half-brother and the archbreaker of the covenant, said that this was only a blind, that while openly stating that he was secretly encouraging his followers to maintain and accept him as a manifestation. Those who overestimate the station of Abdu'l-Baha are quite as reprehensible and have done just as much harm as those who underestimate it. Laurel gasped. Do you mean that those who have considered Abdu'l-Baha a manifestation are equally as bad as those who have opposed and denied him? Shoghi Effendi. Yes, that's what I mean, for they continually furnish the enemy with proof for false statements. When the will and testament was produced, various believers said Muhammad Ali could no longer deny the full import of Abdu'l-Baha's meaning. For surely in his last document, his will, left to voice his directions and desires in perpetuity, he could not have failed to claim this exalted station if all his life this had been his aim and intent. When shown the will, Muhammad Ali said that this was negligible compared to the insidious work which had left this impression about the master in the hearts of the believers. Keith Ransom Kaler says, Shoghi Effendi, what do we do with the tablet of the branch in which Baha'u'llah says of Abdu'l-Baha, he is myself, the shining place of my identity? Shoghi Effendi says, this does not refer to Abdu'l-Baha. This means the voice of God referring to Baha'u'llah, not Baha'u'llah referring to Abdu'l-Baha. Turning to the will and testament, we find the words of Abdu'l-Baha about the two manifestations, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, and the servitude of all else toward them. Laurel asked, but how does this statement come to be in the scriptures? Shoghi Effendi, this book, Baha'i Scriptures, was printed without my. I was not consulted about it. Sometime after its publication, I received a copy, which was the first I had seen. It is full of errors. Many quotations from the writings of Baha'u'llah have been cut without putting the dotted line to show that this has been done. Had I been consulted, I certainly would not have permitted these errors to have occurred. Heath, then how shall we present the Master? What about the come in the glory of the Father, and that no man cometh unto the Father save through the Son? How can Baha'u'llah represent the second coming of the Son? Shoghi Effendi, this Son, the Christ that was Jesus in Jesus, has returned in Baha'u'llah. Its fullest station, God is the Father, the essence unmanifest. Man cannot know him or comprehend him. He can be known only through his manifestation, the Son. Baha'u'llah is that manifestation of the Son that has come in the full glory of the Father. This idea about Abdu'l-Baha, that the Son is the Father and the Father is the Son, is a reversion to Catholicism. These ideas are pure superstition and could have no basis. You ridicule the Roman Catholics for their irrational ideas, and would yourselves fall into the same error? Shoghi Effendi, since Baha'u'llah has made Abdu'l-Baha the infallible interpreter of his words, which then should have the superior weight? Heath, Baha'u'llah, holding the idea that since he was the manifestation, was not, the former would then be superior to the latter. Shoghi Effendi responds, not at all. The interpreter is the one whose word we must take, for he has the power to tell us just what the speaker means. Therefore, we must turn to the words of Abdu'l-Baha to determine this question of stations. In writing to America about the qualification for voting, I quoted from the Will and Testament and referred to Abdu'l-Baha as the true exemplar. What did the believers take that to mean? Of course, I used the utmost delicacy, for it might do great harm to have the question too suddenly projected. Keith, but Shoghi Effendi, we would be considered uninformed and unfit to teach in America if we did not make the covenant of God co-equal with the manifestation of Baha'u'llah. This is unwarranted, answered the guardian. In the light of the master's continuous denials, how can the believers think this? Owing to the passage, says Keith, in question in the scriptures, Baha'i scriptures, where it reads that Abdul-Baha is the self of Baha'u'llah, and for another reason that it's universal belief among the teachers. At a gathering in New York, in the will, Abdul-Baha was presenting Baha'u'llah to the complete effacement of himself, leaving no testimony and giving no divine station to himself, which horrified Mrs. Kinney and Archbishop Barrow. Shoghi Effendi responds, Horace and I are in full accord on this matter. Horace, who evidently holds my view, put that footnote in the scriptures below the tablet of the branch, having taken it bodily from Esselmont's book. The same evening, Shoghi Effendi sent for a copy of the tablet of the branch in Persian to show that this passage did not occur in the original. Lyle asked, are you aware to what extent the American believers teach these ideas and dogmas? While we are on the subject, may we have another question? And they go on then questioning about the station of the guardian, which is not our point at the moment. But you will see in the text of the dispensation why this previous explanation helps us to understand what Shoghi Effendi is establishing and why he goes into detail to remove the misunderstandings surrounding the alleged attribution in the Baha'i scriptures that I'll show you copies of presently. Now, in contrast to that, we have the words of the guardian in the dispensation. We're going back to the text of the dispensation now, left pilgrim notes. I want to share this on the screen with you just a second. I think we have it now. Having finished the quotations from Abdul-Baha, where he clearly claims limitations to his own position with respect to not being a manifestation, Shoghi Effendi then writes, from such clear and formally laid down statements, incompatible as they are with any assertion of a claim to prophethood, we should not by any means infer that Abdul-Baha is merely one of the servants of the Blessed Beauty, or at best, one whose function is to be confined to that of the authorized interpreter of his father's teachings. Far be it from me to entertain such a notion or to wish to instill such sentiments. To regard him in such a light is a manifest betrayal of the priceless heritage bequeathed by Baha'u'llah to mankind. The master occupying an office with no equivalent in all of religious history, in all of recorded religious history. He's quite unique. And we're going to see now in certain passages which Shoghi Effendi draws to our attention, the greatness of Abdul-Baha and why he would have elevated Abdul-Baha, identifying him with one of the three central figures of the faith, and how his spirit prevails the whole of creation and overshadows all of us in our activities, how his omniscience reaches into the souls of all men, and so that he sees when he wishes to see, he sees your participation and the beauty of the Baha'i gatherings in different places. Sometimes he writes to the Baha'is and said, I was in that gathering with you. He's in the Holy Land, they're in America. He says, That was a glorious meeting. That was a wonderful meeting, so on, that kind of thing. Now, immeasurably exalted is this station conferred upon him, Abdu'l-Baha, by the supreme pen of Baha'u'llah. Above and beyond the implications of these, his own written statements, he's been curtailing, because of the arguments of the covenant breakers saying that he was claiming to be a manifestation, he was curtailing his pronouncements and minimizing them to the maximum. Look at this now, this new paragraph. Whether in the Kitab Aqdas, the most weighty and sacred of all the works of Baha'u'llah, or in the Kitab-i-Ad, the book of his covenant, the tablet of the branch, such references as have been recorded by the pen of Baha'u'llah, references which the tablets of his father addressed to him mightily reinforce, in addition to those, they invest Abdu'l-Baha with a power and surround him with a halo which the present generation can never adequately appreciate. Now we're going forward to see. Here again we have, as we saw from a list of titles from God Passes By, now here in the dispensation itself, Shoghi Effendi summarizes the titles and attributions of Abdu'l-Baha, the master. He is and should for all time be regarded first and foremost as the center and pivot of Baha'u'llah's peerless and all-enfolding covenant. He is his most exalted handiwork, the stainless mirror of his light, the perfect exemplar of his teachings, the unerring interpreter of his word, the embodiment of every Baha'i ideal, the incarnation of every Baha'i virtue, the most mighty branch sprung from the ancient root, the limb of the law of God, the being round whom all names revolve, the mainspring of the oneness of humanity, the ensign of the most great peace, the moon of the central orb of this most holy dispensation. Styles and titles that are implicit and find their truest, their highest and fairest expression in the magic name Abdu'l-Baha. He is above and beyond these appellations, the mystery of God, an expression by which Baha'u'llah himself has chosen to designate him, and which, while it does not by any means justify us to assign to him the station of prophethood, indicates how in the person of Abdu'l-Baha, the incompatible characteristics of a human nature and superhuman knowledge and perfection have been blended and are completely harmonized. Shoghi Effendi moving us on to a broader comprehension of the endless magnitude of that Baha'u'llah is assigned to Abdu'l-Baha and of Abdu'l-Baha's station. Now turns to the quotations from that he's mentioned earlier. This one, first one from the Aqdas. When the ocean of my presence hath ebbed and the book of my revelation is ended, proclaims the Kitab Aqdas, turn your faces towards him whom God hath purposed, who hath branched from this ancient root. And again, when the mystic dove will have praised and sought its far off goal, its hidden habitation, refer ye whatsoever ye understand not in the book to him who hath branched from this mighty stock. In the Kitab-i-Ahd, that is the Book of Baha'u'llah's Covenant, moreover, Baha'u'llah solemnly and explicitly declares it is incumbent upon the Agsan, the Afnan, and my kindred to turn one and all their faces towards the most mighty branch. Consider that which we have revealed. When the ocean of my presence hath ebbed and the book of my revelation is ended, turn your faces towards him whom God hath purposed, who hath branched from this ancient root. Then Baha'u'llah's words, the object of this sacred verse is none other except the most mighty branch. In other words, Abdul Baha. Thus have we graciously revealed unto you our potent will, and I am verily the gracious, the all-powerful. Now, friends, it's useful to know that within the faith in general and within the families, the father was the trunk, was the main root, and his offspring were the branches that came from him. And Abdul Baha's title of the most mighty branch was universally known because Baha'u'llah never referred to Abdul Baha as Abdul Baha. He referred to himself that. He assumed a position of humility of the servant or the slave of Baha'u'llah. And the other branches had their own titles, but they were less. Have we graciously revealed to you our potent will, and I am verily the gracious, the all-powerful. Right, that's so much for the Book of the Covenant. Now, Shoghi Effendi goes from the tablet of the branch, the Surah Ghosn. The following verses have been recorded there by Baha'u'llah. There hath branched from the Sadrat al-Muntaha, which is the title of Baha'u'llah, this sacred and glorious being, this branch of holiness. Well is it with him that hath sought his shelter and abideth beneath his shadow. Verily, the limb of the law of God hath sprung forth from this root, which God hath firmly implanted in the ground of his will, and whose branch hath been so uplifted that to encompass the whole of creation. Magnified be he, therefore, for this sublime, this blessed, this mighty, this exalted handiwork. A word hath, as a token of our grace, gone forth from the most great tablet, a word which God hath adorned with the ornament of his own self, and made it sovereign over the earth and all that is therein, a sign of his greatness and power among its people. Render thanks unto God, O people, for his appearance, for verily he is the most great favor unto you, the most perfect bounty upon you. Own is quickened. Whoso turneth towards him hath turned towards God, and whoso turneth away from him hath turned away from my beauty, hath repudiated my proof, and transgressed against me. He is the trust of God amongst you, his charge within you, his manifestation unto you, and his appearance among his favored servants. We have sent him down in the form of a human temple. Blessed and sanctified be God, who createth whatsoever he willeth through his infallible decree. They who deprive themselves of the shadow of the branch are lost in the wilderness of error, are consumed by the heat of worldly desires, and are of those who will assuredly perish. I want to go back to seeing you on the screen here. Let's see. I'll have to figure out how to do that here. Stop share. All right. There we I think we're back now. Okay, friends. Now, going on with the text of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, we read again a tablet from Baha'u'llah in his own handwriting, addressed to Abdul Baha. Baha'u'llah to Abdul Baha. O thou who art the apple of mine eye, my glory, the ocean of my loving kindness, the sun of my bounty, the heaven of my mercy rest upon thee. We pray, God, to illumine the world through thy knowledge and wisdom, to ordain for thee that which will gladden thine heart and impart consolation to thine eyes. And in another tablet he writes, the glory of God rest upon thee and upon whosoever serveth thee and circleth round thee. Woe, great woe betide him that opposeth and injureth thee. Well is it with him that sweareth fealty to thee. The fire of hell torment him who is thine enemy. We have made thee a shelter for all mankind, he in yet another tablet affirms. We have made thee a shelter for all mankind, a shield unto all who are in heaven and on earth, a stronghold for whosoever hath believed in God, the incomparable, the all-knowing. God grant that through thee he may protect them, may enrich and sustain them, that he may inspire them with that which shall be a wellspring of wealth unto all created things, an ocean of bounty unto all men, and the dayspring of mercy unto all peoples. And finally, we have the words of Baha'u'llah from a prayer revealed in Abdul Baha's honor, where he supplicates, Thou knowest, O my God, that I desire for him not except that which thou didst desire, and have chosen him for no other purpose, for no purpose save that which thou hadst intended for him. Render him victorious, therefore, through thy hosts of earth and heaven. Ordain, I beseech thee, by the ardor of my love for thee and my yearning to manifest thy cause, for him as well as for them that love him, that which thou hast destined for thy messengers and the trustees of thy revelation. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the All-Powerful. Friends, you can see how these quotations mounting one slightest vision of who the master is and the unique position he occupies in the whole of religious history. We come to another paragraph. He says, in a letter dictated by Baha'u'llah and addressed by Mirza Agha Jan, his amanuensis, to Abdul Baha, while the latter was on a visit to Beirut, we read the following. Baha'u'llah to Abdul Baha when he was on a visit to Beirut. Praise be to him who hath honored the land of Ba, in other words, Beirut, through the presence of him round whom all names revolve. All the atoms of the earth have announced unto all created things that from behind the gate of the prison city there hath appeared, and above its horizon there hath shone forth the orb of the beauty of the great, the most mighty branch of God, his ancient and immutable mystery. proceeding on its way to another land. Sorrow thereby hath enveloped this prison city, whilst another land rejoiceth. Blessed, doubly blessed is the ground which his footsteps have trodden. The eye that hath been cheered by the beauty of his countenance. The ear that hath been honored by hearkening to his call. The heart that hath tasted the sweetness of his love. The breast that hath dilated through his remembrance. The pen that hath voiced his praise. The scroll that hath borne the testimony of his writings. Finally, Abdu'l-Baha, writing in confirmation of the authority conferred upon him by Baha'u'llah, makes the following statement. In accordance with the explicit text of the Kitab Aqdas, Baha'u'llah hath made the sender of the covenant the interpreter of his word, a covenant so firm and mighty that from the beginning of time until the present day, no religious dispensation hath produced its like. Returning again to the balancing of our understanding, if you will, of the station of the master. Shoghi Effendi writes, exalted as is the rank of Abdu'l-Baha. I'd like to put this on the screen again for you. I think we've got it now. Various things we just read. All right, so we need to go to another. Now we're going to the continuation of the text here. This would be now paragraph 83, if you have a version with the paragraphs numbered. Shoghi Effendi continues, exalted as is the rank of Abdu'l-Baha, which we just bore witness to in this wonderful quotations that he's included here. However profuse the praises with which in these sacred books and tablets Baha'u'llah has glorified his son, so unique a distinction must never be construed as conferring upon its recipient a station with or equivalent to that of his father, the manifestation himself. To give such an interpretation to any of these quoted passages would at once, and for obvious reasons, bring it into context to which I have already referred. Indeed, as I've already stated, those who overestimate Abdu'l-Baha's station are just as reprehensible and have done just as much harm as those who underestimate it. Again, friends, our present generation of believers, not having been instilled in the Abdu'l-Baha's station and in absorbing and digesting this explanation of Shoghi Effendi in the dispensation, we don't realize how great the misgivings and misunderstanding had become and how important it was that Shoghi Effendi clarify it in his own words. Now, this overestimating of Abdu'l-Baha's station upon an altogether unwarranted inference from Baha'u'llah's writings, they are inadvertently justifying and continuously furnishing the enemy with proofs for his false accusations and misleading statements. Now, there's those that would plant doubts about Abdu'l-Baha because they said he was claiming to be a manifestation, which he was, of course, not, and he was busy denying it all the time. I feel it equivocation or hesitation that neither in the Kitabi Akdas, nor in the Book of Baha'u'llah's Covenant, nor even in the Tablet of the Branch, nor in any other tablet, whether revealed by Baha'u'llah or Abdu'l-Baha, is there any authority whatever for the opinion that inclines to uphold the so-called mystic unity of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha, or to establish the identity of the latter with his father or with any preceding manifestation, such as the concept that Abdu'l-Baha was the return being the son and Baha'u'llah being the father. This erroneous conception may in part be ascribed to an altogether extravagant interpretation in the Tablet of the Branch, to the introduction into its English translation of certain words that are either non-existent, misleading, or ambiguous in their connotation. It is no doubt chiefly based upon an altogether unjustified inference from the opening passages of a tablet of Baha'u'llah as reproduced in the Baha'i scriptures immediately precede, and here's the important part, but form no part of the said tablet of the branch. All right, now, friends, I want to again. Now we go to some other passages. The so-called mystic unity. This is now the no saw it referred to. Let me go. I'm sorry. Go back to this. So-called in this and the following paragraph, widespread misunderstandings regarding the station of the master. He first establishes that no authority is found in any of the writings of Baha'u'llah to equate the identity of the master with Baha'u'llah himself, the so-called mystic unity, or second of any previous prophet, particularly Jesus Christ. This addressed the popular but erroneous belief among the Baha'i friends based on their understanding of the Bible that the coming of Baha'u'llah referred to the promised appearance of the Father, and that Abdu'l-Baha fulfilled the prophecies referring to the return of the Son of Jesus Christ. The Guardian ascribes this misconception as deriving on one hand from a misinterpretation of terms and passages in the Tablet of the Branch, and on the other from misleading publication entitled Baha'i Scriptures. He goes on to cite the words of Abdu'l-Baha, which categorically refutes such conceptions. Now we have a quotation that was cited in a publication called Know Your Baha'i Literature, which gives further background on this. An important milestone in making available a comprehensive volume of the then available translations of the writings of Baha'u'llah and writings and talks of the Master, because there are still many explanation by Horace Holly, Secretary of the NSA, in a letter dated June 26th, 1958, will help to clarify it. Two, the purpose was to make available as many tablets as possible. Some of the material existed only in typewritten form. Believers had much information about the various tablets of Baha'u'llah, except through reference in Words of Baha'u'llah, and except for the tablets and the Agon, which had been published in the English language, much material was badly translated. The Guardian's translations made it advisable to revise the scriptures, and a volume titled The Baha'i World Faith was the result. It has replaced Baha'i scriptures. The authentic Baha'i texts like Gleanings, Prayers and Meditations, Igan, etc., are what we should study at this time. It's merely a waste of time to pay attention to passages not found in the published literature now available. Included below are the title page and relevant excerpt from that paragraphs that we're looking at in the dispensation. Here's the title. It says Selections from the Utterances of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, edited by Horace Holly. And then chapter 6 is titled The Covenant and Testament of Baha'u'llah, and starts off with this quotation here. It does say Tablet of the Branch down below, as you'll see, but this first tablet, it says, in his name, who shines forth from the horizon of might. Verily, the tongue or in the world, concerning the appearance of the greatest name, Baha'u'llah, and who takes his covenant among the nations. That would be the great covenant. Verily he, and there's an asterisk here, is myself. Verily he is myself, the shining place of my identity. Now you remember Shoghi Effendi said that these words are from God referring to Baha'u'llah. Not, that's his interpretation, not Baha'u'llah referring to Abdul Baha. Now the asterisk at the bottom says Abdul Baha. Now this is a note that was derived from Dr. Esselmont in Baha'u'llah in the New Era, understanding that this passage was thought to be referring to Abdul Baha. And it's on that basis that the misunderstanding of Abdul Baha's station grew up amongst the believers. Master. So this, just hold an image of this in your minds.
Sound improvement.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, we're making some technical changes here. Now, returning to the text of the dispensation, I'm hoping that all this is clarifying these passages for you, because they're continually confusing the believers if you don't know a little of this history and you haven't seen the images of Baha'i scriptures. It should be made clear to everyone reading those extracts that by the phrase, the tongue of the ancient, no one is meant but God, and that the term, the greatest name, is an obvious reference to Baha'u'llah, and that the covenant referred to is not the specific covenant of which Baha'u'llah is the immediate author and Abdul Baha the sender, but that general covenant God himself invariably establishes with mankind when he inaugurates a new dispensation that gives us those extracts. The glad tidings is none other than the voice of God referring to Baha'u'llah, and not Baha'u'llah referring to Abdul Baha. Moreover, to maintain that the assertion of denoting the mystic unity of God in his manifestations, as explained in the Kitab-i-Gan, establishes the identity of Baha'u'llah with Abdul Baha, would constitute a principle of the oneness of God's manifestations, a principle which the author of these same extracts is seeking by implication to emphasize. It would also amount to a reversion to those irrational and superstitious beliefs that have insensibly crept in the first century of the Christian era into the teachings of Jesus Christ, and by crystallizing into accepted dogmas, have impaired the effectiveness and obscured the purpose of the Christian faith. We won't get into the meaning of that at the moment. Of the branch, that the true meaning, the real significance, the innermost secret of these verses, of these very words, is my own servitude to the threshold, sacred threshold of the Abha beauty, my complete self-effacement, my utter nothingness before him. This is my resplendent crown, my most precious adorning. On this I pride myself in the kingdom of earth and heaven. Therein I glory among the company of the well-favored. No one is permitted, he warns us in the passage which immediately follows, to give these verses any other interpretation. I am he, in this same connection affirms, according to the explicit text of the Akdas, the Kitabi Akdas and the Kitabi the manifest interpreter of the Word of God. Whoso deviates from my interpretation is a victim of his own fancy. Furthermore, the inescapable inference from the belief in the identity of the author of our faith with him who is the center of his covenant would be to place Abdu'l-Baha in a position superior to that not yet universally recognized principle of this revelation. Now, we saw earlier how the independent prophethood is firmly established by his own testimonies, by the affirmations of Baha'u'llah, and also by the interpretations of Abdu'l-Baha. If we identify Abdu'l-Baha with the author of the faith as being identical, he writes, it would also justify striven to poison the minds and pervert the understanding of Baha'u'llah's loyal followers. And here he begins to establish some very important points. It would be more correct and in consonance with the established principles of Baha'u'llah and the Bab, if instead of maintaining this fictitious identity with reference to Abdu'l-Baha, we regard the forerunner and the founder of our faith as identical in reality, a truth which the text of the Surat al-Haykal unmistakably affirms. That's the tablet of the branch. Quote, had the primal point, the Bab, been someone else beside me, as ye claim, is Baha'u'llah's explicit statement, and had attained my presence, verily he would have never allowed himself to be separated from me, but rather we would have had mutual delights with each other in my days. He who now voiceth the word of God, Baha'u'llah again affirms, is none other than except the primal point, has once again been made manifest. He thus refers to himself in a tablet addressed to one of the letters of the living, the same as the one who appeared in the is one of his mighty signs. Who, he pleads in the Surah Adam, will arise to secure the triumph of the primal beauty, the Bab, revealed in the countenance of his succeeding manifestation, referring to the revelation proclaimed by the Bab as my own previous manifestation. Such a close identity between. In summary, Shoghi Effendi goes on to reiterate the points that he's been making. That Abdul Baha is not a manifestation of God, that he gets his light, his inspiration, and sustenance direct from the fountainhead of the Baha'i revelation, that he reflects, even as a clear and perfect mirror, the rays of Baha'u'llah's glory, and does not inherently possess that indefinable yet all-pervading reality, the exclusive possession of which is the hallmark of prophethood. That his words are not equal in rank, though they possess an equal validity with the utterances of Baha'u'llah. That he is not to be acclaimed as the return of Jesus Christ, the Son who will come in the glory of the Father. These truths find added justification and are further reinforced by the following statement of Abdul Baha addressed to somebody. I'll conclude this section. You have written that there is a difference among the believers concerning the second coming of Christ. Gracious God, time and again this question hath arisen, and its answer hath emanated in a clear and irrefutable statement from the pen of Abdul Baha, that what is meant in the prophecies by the Lord of hosts and the promised Christ is the blessed perfection, Baha'u'llah, and His Holiness the Exalted One, the Bab. My name is Abdul Baha. My qualification is Abdul Baha. My reality is Abdul Baha. My praise is Abdul Baha. Thraldom to the blessed perfection is my glorious and refulgent diadem, and servitude to all the human race, my perpetual religion. No name, no title, no mention, no commendation have I, nor will ever have, except Abdul Baha. This is my longing. This is my greatest yearning. This is my eternal life. This is my everlasting glory. I think, friends, we have a very complete presentation of the station of Abdul Baha, clarification for all time from Shoghi Effendi. And the truths that he's stating in the dispensation, that the vitality of our faith and our ability to defend the essential verities of the cause rests. We have to absorb these teachings. I hope you'll look at this section again. If you have any questions about it, those will come up also. Let's see where we are with chats now. No, let's see. I'm not getting the chats here. Just a second. I'm sorry, I can't get to your questions. I'm working on that. Just say. Let's see. We come back to the top again here. We still have a bit to go with the dispensation. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to follow that with. I have several things that I'm thinking about. I'll let you know once that's established. Someone's asked the question, what's next? With regard to the respite, the last week, having said that God gave humanity 100 years to recognize the new manifestation, I think generally, roughly, it's the 100 years from Baha'u'llah's declaration and from the 100th anniversary of the revelation of the Kitab Yaqtas, the most holy book. We're now out on our own beyond that respite. And things are getting worse and quickening. But also the mounting influence of the power of the dispensation itself, of the revelation, is growing. All right, we've had some audio problems. I don't know whether the recording of this session is going to solve that or not. We'll see what we can do. Thank you for the comment, Gwen. There won't be anything similar to the station of the master in this dispensation. We need a new manifestation, and we see how that goes forward. But certainly, Abdul Baha will remain as the center of the covenant in the mother dispensation of the entire Baha'i cycle, which is the one we're presently in. So I think that seems to have exhausted the question I ask. It's very helpful to see those actual plates from Baha'i scriptures, as in the past it led to some confusion and misunderstanding, because the believers at the time that the dispensation was written all would have been familiar. Generally, the believers would have been familiar with the book Baha'i scriptures and would have seen that quotation, which does not form part of the tablet of the branch and has been misunderstood as referring to Abdul Baha, and therefore created this whole idea of the mystic unity of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, whereas Shoghi Effendi was pressed to demonstrate for us is actually the mystic unity of Baha'u'llah and the Ba'a. Those are wonderful things. Now, ahead of us, we're going to take a look at some of the wonders of the administrative order and its origins. We'll take that up next week, friends. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I wish you have a very confirmed week, and that you'll be praying to make contact with waiting souls and be able to deliver them a first impression of the revelation, so that they might benefit from something about the writings of the new race of men, implications of family lineages, I think the new race of men, he said, is a race not connected to descendants, but is the question of those Baha'is who attain to a suppression of their own will in the will of God. That the characterization of the new race of men is that they conform, souls that conform and become clear mirrors of the purpose and intention of God's revelation, and therefore are a source of inspiration and guidance, not absolute guidance, but inspirational guidance, attracting people to the revelation where they become then grounded in divine truth. So thank you very much, friends. You have a great week. I'm going to sign off for the moment. Look forward to see you next time.